If this video disappears, you'll know Nickelodeon found out I talked. I need to start with that because once you hear what I'm about to tell you, you'll understand why this shouldn't exist on the internet. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to sell you some spooky bedtime story. I'm talking about something real, something I saw with my own eyes that I wish I hadn't. When you think of Nickelodeon, you probably think of childhood. Slime pouring on giggling kids, bright orange logos, SpongeBob laughing underwater. I used to think of that too. That was the comfort food of my childhood. The noise in the background while life was still simple. Cartoons that promised the world was safe, silly, and full of color. But I need you to hold that memory in your mind for a second. Bright, harmless, nostalgic. Because the contrast matters. Now imagine those same shows stripped bare, gutted, and twisted into something unrecognizable. Imagine an episode so deeply wrong that the studio buried it, locked it away, and hoped no one outside their inner circle would ever see it. I saw it. I wasn't supposed to, but I did, and it explained everything. You'll understand what I mean by everything later, how one tape can change the way you look at your childhood, the network, even the people behind it. But right now, you just need to know one thing. If you've ever wondered why certain rumors about Nickelodeon never go away, or why some creators seem to vanish overnight, the answer might be inside that episode. I can still picture the opening frames burned into my mind. At first, it looked normal enough, like something I had watched 1,000 times. Familiar characters, the same jingle, the same bright colors. But there was something off, something I couldn't name at first. Like the world you thought you knew had been tilted just a degree too far. I'll tell you exactly what I saw, but I'll warn you now, you won't want to believe it. This isn't one of those creepy lost episode stories you read on forums for a laugh. This isn't entertainment. This is the reason I don't sleep with my TV plugged in anymore. And if you stick with me, I'll show you how it all began. When I think back to being a kid, Nickelodeon was more than just TV. It was the rhythm of my afternoons. I'd come home from school, toss my backpack in the corner, and disappear into a world of slime buckets, cartoons, and game shows where kids my age looked like they were having the time of their lives. There was a strange comfort in those neon sets and laugh tracks. No matter how bad my day was, I could count on SpongeBob to crack a joke, Rugrats to stumble into a silly adventure, or Keenan and Kel to get themselves into trouble. Nickelodeon felt safe, like a babysitter made of orange and green who never judged you, never scared you, and always made sure you laughed before bed. But safety doesn't last forever. Somewhere between growing up and realizing the world wasn't as simple as cartoons made it seem, I stumbled onto whispers. At first it was nothing, just weird threads on obscure forums, half-baked rumors about lost episodes that were too disturbing to air. I dismissed them like most people would. Internet creepypasta, digital campfire stories meant to freak you out and rack up clicks. But then, one particular rumor kept surfacing. It wasn't about SpongeBob laughing a little too long or Rugrats going dark. It was about a single episode. A Nickelodeon cartoon everyone knew, but with an installment that supposedly aired only once before being pulled forever. Some called it an accident. Others swore the animators made it on purpose. But the common thread in every version of the story was simple. If you ever saw it, you'd never look at Nickelodeon the same way again. I tried to laugh it off, but the more I read, the more the details lined up. Users who didn't know each other described the same opening shot, the same ending that wasn't an ending at all, but something far worse. That's when I met him. Not in person. Online, of course. A username I won't repeat because I'm pretty sure it wasn't his first or his last. We ended up trading posts on one of those forums that existed just outside the mainstream web, the kind you had to dig for. He claimed he had the episode. Not a clip, Not a rumor, an actual copy, ripped from a tape that had been locked away. I remember the first message he sent me after I asked if it was real. "It's real, but you'll regret watching this." That should have been enough for me to walk away, to close the tab, shut down the computer, and let it stay an urban legend. But curiosity is a disease, and once it gets in your system, it spreads fast. Because if he was telling the truth, and Nickelodeon really had hidden something, then every rumor I dismissed, every dark whisper I'd ignored, might have been rooted in something real. And once you hear the promise of a forbidden truth, it's almost impossible to unhear it. That's how I found myself agreeing to watch. Took a week before he finally sent it. Not a stream, not a YouTube rip. He told me it had to be physical. Said he didn't trust the file to stay online for long. When the padded envelope arrived, I almost laughed. Inside was an old black VHS tape. No label, no markings, just the smell of dust and plastic, like it had been forgotten in a basement for years. I didn't even own a working VCR anymore. I had to dig one out of the attic, covered in cobwebs, the kind of machine that clunked louder than it played. My hands shook as I slid the tape in, not because I expected anything, but because I didn't know what I was expecting. The TV buzzed to life, filling the room with static. For a long, uncomfortable moment, nothing happened. Then the Nickelodeon logo flickered on screen. Only it wasn't right. The orange splat looked dull, almost brown, and the jingle played half a step too slow, like someone dragging their fingers across piano keys. I remember whispering to myself, it looked like the show I loved, but it wasn't. At first, the episode opened like it was supposed to. The familiar characters appeared, the theme song kicked in, but the colors were wrong. Skin tones leaned gray. The backgrounds felt washed out, as though the animators had forgotten to finish shading. The laugh track was there too, but it came in too late, half a beat behind the jokes, as if someone had recorded laughter from an empty room and stitched it in. It didn't feel like a kid's show anymore. It felt like something wearing the skin of a kid's show. And then came the glitches. Every few seconds, the screen would jerk, lines of static tearing through the frame. Sometimes the characters' mouths kept moving, but no words came out. Other times the sound would cut completely, leaving me staring at an image frozen too long, characters grinning, eyes wide, like they knew I was watching. I leaned forward, remote in hand, waiting for it to cut back to normal. It never did. The theme song slowed to a crawl, the upbeat melody sagging into something funereal. I swear one of the voices cracked, breaking into what almost sounded like a sob. I kept telling myself this was some fan edit, a prank. Someone with too much time on their hands trying to freak people out online. But there was a weight to it that I couldn't shake. This wasn't the kind of thing you uploaded to creep out a stranger. This felt like it had been made this way. The first dialogue came in stilted, unnatural tones. Characters I'd grown up with suddenly had pauses between their lines, like they didn't want to say the words. Their voices were lower, raspier, missing the bounce I remembered. The laugh track cut in again, late, hollow, echoing. It didn't sound like kids at all. It sounded like adults, maybe only a handful of them, laughing because someone told them to. By then, my stomach had already tightened. I wanted to shut it off, but I didn't, because the thing about watching something forbidden is that you convince yourself you have to know more, that you can't stop halfway. You need to see where it goes, even if every instinct is screaming to turn it off. And trust me, the worst was still to come. I'll get to that part, but you need to understand the build-up first. Because the glitches were just the beginning. The first few minutes lulled me into thinking it might just stay weird. Offshore but survivable. A parody of itself, maybe. That illusion didn't last long. The episode began with the characters walking through a familiar set. Bright backdrops, cheery music, the kind of harmless setting I remembered from childhood. But every detail felt wrong. The sky was the color of old dishwater. The laugh track fired too soon or too late, never matching the action. And the characters, the characters moved just a little too slowly, like puppets being dragged on strings. The first rail warning came when one of them, smiling, eyes too wide, tripped and fell. Normally that would cue slapstick, a laugh, maybe another character rushing to help. Instead, the camera lingered. The smile stayed frozen, stretching, as red pooled under the character's nose. The laugh track played, but it wasn't laughing anymore. It was coughing. I thought maybe it was an error on the tape, a messed up dub, until one of the characters looked straight at the camera, straight at me, and whispered, "This isn't for kids. This is for you." My chest tightened. For a second, I considered stopping it there, but my hand froze halfway to the remote, because I had to know. The scene shifted. The characters were on set now, what looked like one of those old slime stages. The walls still carried the same neon orange, but it peeled in strips, exposing gray concrete underneath. The slime barrels stood in the background, but instead of spilling green goop, they dripped something thicker, darker. One character told a joke, something stupid about slipping on a banana peel. The punchline dropped, but instead of laughter, there was silence. Then, a low groan, almost like the audience wasn't amused but in pain. And then the blood came. It wasn't sudden. It started as tears, bright red streaking down the characters' faces as they kept grinning. Their cartoon mouths stretched too wide. One of them coughed mid-line, hacking up crimson onto the floor. And the laugh track cut in, desperate, forced, like someone holding a gun just off-screen was demanding the laughter keep going. I remember sitting there, pulse hammering, telling myself, it's just a show, just a glitch, just a sick edit. But the longer it played, the harder it was to believe that. Because the jokes got darker. The characters started referencing things they couldn't know. One muttered about kids left behind in the studio. Another mentioned names, real names, not character names that I recognized. Actors, writers, people who'd quietly disappeared from Nickelodeon without explanation. At one point, a character asked another, "Do you remember what they did in 1996? The other didn't answer. They just stared forward, shaking, while the camera zoomed closer and closer on their face until the frame distorted. I almost pulled the plug right then, but I didn't, because this episode, it explained things about Nickelodeon I wish I never knew. The longer I watched, the more obvious it became that this wasn't just entertainment. It was a message. Buried in the jokes, the bright sets, the fake laughter, there were glimpses of something larger, references to lawsuits, to secret firings, to rumors I'd only ever seen whispered about online. Except now those whispers were coming out of the mouths of smiling, bloodied cartoons. The slime stage darkened. The lights flickered. A distorted voice crackled over the audio. "We all signed the contract. We can't leave." The characters began repeating lines, over and over. Their movements jerked, as if the animation itself was breaking apart. And then one of them turned again, eyes black pits, and said something I will never forget. "You're still watching. Why?" I flinched so hard I dropped the remote, because in that moment it didn't feel like a show at all. It felt like the tape was aware of me, like it knew I was in the room. I forced myself to pick the remote back up, but I didn't turn it off. Couldn't, because by then, I realized this wasn't just some twisted parody. This wasn't fan-made. This was deliberate. And if Nickelodeon really tried to bury this, then the question wasn't just why it was made. The real question was, what else had they hidden? It wasn't just a cartoon. It was a confession. The shift happened so suddenly I didn't even notice at first. The scene I'd been watching, characters on the slime stage, blood in their eyes, flickered and warped. For a fraction of a second, there was nothing but black screen and a faint hiss of static. Then, a new sequence began. Only this wasn't part of any show I'd ever seen. The frame filled with symbols, strange, jagged sketches that looked hand-drawn, layered between stills of characters smiling too wide. At first, they were just flashes, half a second, then gone. But they kept repeating longer each time, like the tape wanted to make sure I didn't miss them. One looked like a contract. I couldn't read the words, it was in some other language or maybe backwards, but the signatures were there, dozens of them, scrawled in childish handwriting and adult cursive, overlapping like people had signed in a panic. Another frame showed the orange Nickelodeon splat, except instead of paint, it dripped. It looked too thick to be ink. And then came the audio. The laugh track cut out completely, replaced by something faint and reversed. I turned the volume up against every instinct, and my blood froze. Behind the distortion, I could make out whispers, human voices, layered over one another, speaking lines like prayers or chants. One of them repeated, "We gave them the children. They gave us the screen." I don't know if that's what it really said. Maybe my brain twisted it. Maybe I wanted to hear something else. But once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. The characters reappeared, slumped, drained of color. Their outlines bled into the background as though the animation was dissolving. One of them stood up shakily, faced the camera, and croaked, "Do you understand now?" I whispered back before I realized it. "No." That's when the subliminal frames sped up. Scenes flashed by, headshots of real children, blurred, crying. A production set empty except for a chair. A man's silhouette, tall, heavy, standing in a doorway that never quite came into focus. And then the cartoon's theme song returned, faint, warped beyond recognition. But over it, layered thin like static, came another voice. A man's voice, clearer than anything else on the tape. "We made a deal, and it never ends." I sat frozen, my skin crawling, because this wasn't just a creepy tape anymore. This was a message. Whether it was corporate rot, something supernatural, or both, I couldn't tell. Maybe I wasn't supposed to. There are parts one can't repeat. Not because I don't remember, but because I do. Too well. Some images burned into me like scars. Words that don't feel safe to put into the air. If you've ever seen something you wish you hadn't, you'll understand why I'm holding back. All I can say is this. The episode wasn't about making kids laugh. It was about keeping them quiet. The screen froze again on a final shot. The smiling orange splat logo. Only this time, it had words scrawled across it in black, jagged letters. Letters that hadn't been animated but carved. "Don't tell." The tape ended there, just static. But even now, as I sit here telling you this, I don't think it ever really ended. And maybe that's the point. When the tape finally cut to static, I just sat there in the dark, staring at my reflection in the blank screen. My hands were shaking, my throat was dry, but more than anything, I felt like something had shifted, like the air in my room wasn't mine anymore. I told myself it was over, that it was just a bad recording, some twisted relic I should have never touched. But then my TV turned itself back on. No VHS, no input selected, just a black screen humming faintly, the same way the tape had hummed before those flashes started. I yanked the plug from the wall. My room went silent, but the silence didn't feel like relief. It felt heavy, like holding your breath in the middle of a nightmare. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of my house made me flinch. My phone buzzed once around 3 a.m. with a new email. The subject line was blank. The body contained only one sentence. "Stop talking about the episode. They're watching." No sender. No trace in my inbox the next morning. I tried reaching out to the friend, the contact who'd given me the tape. His username was gone. Deleted. When I tracked down one of his older accounts, I finally got a reply. Just 3 words. "I never sent it." That's when I knew I wasn't just spooked. This wasn't paranoia. Reality was bleeding. Over the next few days, little things kept happening. My laptop screen flickered during Zoom calls, and for a split second, I thought I saw one of those subliminal frames, black outlines, that same orange splat, words I couldn't read. My phone would glitch, speakers hissing, and I'd hear something that almost sounded like the warped laugh track. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I could hear a voice in the static of my headphones whispering, "Don't tell." I started wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing, if maybe I'd spiraled too far down the rabbit hole. But then I saw new posts pop up on obscure forums, people describing details they shouldn't know, descriptions that matched what I'd seen, which means one of two things. Either I'm not the only one who's watched it, or someone wants me to think I'm not alone. Both options are terrifying. And here's the part that keeps me awake. What I saw felt like a single piece, a fragment, like one episode in a much larger series, buried beneath the bright orange branding and childhood nostalgia. If that tape exists, how many more are out there? And what do they all add up to? I don't know. But I think the answer is worse than anything Nickelodeon ever put on air. If this video vanishes, don't forget what I told you. I know some of you are already opening new tabs, trying to dig up proof, trying to find the tape yourselves. Don't. I'm telling you now, it's not worth it. I thought I could handle it, and look where that got me. My devices glitch, my nights are filled with static, and I'm not even sure if my words are my own anymore. But I also know how this works. The more I warn you off, the more curious some of you will get. That's human nature. Curiosity always wins. That's why they made the episode in the first place, because they knew someone like me, and maybe someone like you, wouldn't be able to look away. So if you've seen something similar, if you've heard whispers about other tapes or other shows, tell me. Leave a comment, share your theory, because I think what I saw is just one piece of something bigger, and maybe together we can connect the dots. I'll say this much, the tape I told you about, it wasn't the only one I was offered. There are more. Files, DVDs, things people swear were never meant to exist. Should I show you those? Or should I burn them before they burn me? That's for you to decide. If this is the last time you hear from me, remember this. Nickelodeon buried something, and they never expected us to dig it up. I started this by warning you that if this video disappears, you'll know why. And now, saying it again, I realize how paranoid I must sound. Maybe I am paranoid. Maybe that's what happens when you watch something you weren't meant to see. Because the truth is, I don't feel alone anymore. Even now, as I'm speaking, I swear I hear faint static under my own voice, like the tape bleeding through, like it's watching me the way I watched it. I keep thinking about those whispers, "Don't tell," and yet here I am, telling you. Maybe that's the curse, that once you know, you can't help but spread it. So, if you've listened this far, you've already taken the first step. The episode isn't just mine anymore. Check your TV tonight. If it turns on by itself, don't watch what plays.